Hi there. In this video, I want to talk about soul and Luos. And soul is the ideal, and Luos is the reality. And of course, Luos is soul written backwards to symbolize Spiritus Mundi or Rex Mundi or the devil. And soul has is surrounded by certain idealistic or utopian characteristics or the good. And Luos is surrounded by what actually goes on in the minds of human beings and what I call the evil. And but as we see here, and as I give examples of, the characteristics from Soul and Luos actually kind of bleed into each other, and in a sense, they're both um, qualities of the world of duality, which which in our perception we divide the world between good and bad, um, and yet you could say a plague on both your houses, following Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, um, and these could be the Capulets and the Montagues, really. But of course, Soul would claim that it's not fighting against Luos, but Luos is fighting against Soul. So it's like, it's like in Faulty Towers. You know, you started the war, you invaded Poland. Anyway, the thing about this video is it arises from somebody who was saying that there's a conspiracy by the Chinese of all people, to who are materialistic, to destroy the Western spiritual heart, by unleashing biological weapons against the West, and there is a plot afoot to take away our focus on soul and replace it with a focus on Luos, the materialist, the manipulator, the predator, the exploiter. And as with all conspiracy theories, it's pretty much nonsense because all conspiracy theories are based on all SRP, which is a fallacy, because all swans are white until you find a black swan, which you find in Australia, and the statement, therefore all swans are white, is undermined. And we see this throughout philosophy. You get these principles of the sanctity of life, and gradually you find that this principle is undermined by questions, which bring into question the very premise on which morality is based. So you end up with, like, is it so good to uphold the principle, the sanctity of life, and are you going to do unspeakably horrible things in the upholding of that principle? So the principle undermines itself, if you will, and this goes pretty much for everything in the world of duality which we see around us. But there's sort of romantic idea, I suppose, that the West has this soul, heart, and we are the peak of human civilization, following the Hegel kind of line, and of course Germany, of course, is the epitome of human civilization. That was up until, of course, the Second World War. Then perhaps it had to come down from its pedestal of itself a little bit after that, which it did. And indeed, Germany after the Second World War became very materialistic, because it really did the whole of Wagner and Hegel and Adolf Hitler were all packaged together, and Romanticism and German Romanticism was deemed to be harmful, and not a thing that civilized people should dwell upon, because its result was the Jewish Holocaust. But we have this right romantic idea of soul, And soul loves God and Goddess, a power greater than yourself, a power other than yourself, the great other, the great beyond, the great principle of being humbled by something greater than yourself, and something which prevents you from going into spiritual pride. And then we have, the soul loves other souls, and we think of the summer solstice, with souls meeting up for hippies festivals, and all hanging out together and hugging each other and tree hugging, and generally, getting together to celebrate the soulness of each other, and all that kind of thing. And then soul loves love, the feeling of love, the romance of love, the higher love, the agape, which of course in Western world is all sort of kind of tumbles together with eros, with sexual love even. But there's a love of brotherhood and sisterhood, and all that sort of comes out. There's all the good hippie stuff that we all know and love. And then there's the love of kindness, of course. And in this world of unkindness, kindness is something to be cultivated. But kindness is not being a sort of, is not a passive doormat kind of feeling that just put up with whatever people do to you. Kindness is linked to understanding, so you understand the motivations behind people's actions, so-called good and bad. So kindness is linked to understanding and an objective appreciation of motivation, and the fact that scarcity ultimately is the great motivator of all our actions and attitudes and cultures. And but so you have this idea of giving and receiving, to give and to receive, the sort of simple life, and the gifts of spirit. And then you have the beauties of life, the beauty of nature, the beauty of music, harmony, order in the universe, that kind of thing. And then you have the beauty that the soul loves storytelling, a contemplation of metaphysics, I was going to put here, but really it's all like stories, really. Stories, metaphors, allegories, and being surrounded by symbols and contemplating the symbols, contemplating the great truths of life. And then, of course, relaxation. The soul loves to relax and to become aware of the breath, of the here and now, the great here and now, and by which we transcend this world of duality altogether, with regard to our awareness of ourselves, positive, sort of established in self, as the Upanishads put it. So you have these positive qualities of the soul, which Gnostics, in particular, are supposed to cultivate consciously. Although I think everybody touches these qualities, and touches soul awareness in everyday life. Everybody does. So I don't think by being a Gnostic you're anything special by trying to cultivate these qualities or contemplate them more than other people do. It doesn't make you more more spiritual than anybody else. Just makes you more aware than anybody else, perhaps. But also perhaps aware of the fact that we are all sinners, mea culpa, in the fact that in the center of your being is soul, but also in the center of your being is spiritus mundi, or luos, which is in fact the opposite. Luos wants, all the things like money and reward, and all the quality. It wants more of everything. It wants to bend the forces of this universe to its will. It wants science and technology. It wants comfort, luxury. It wants to live longer, live better. It wants to be perfect. It wants perfection. It wants purity. It wants to serve the tribe. We all want our tribes to rule the world, or we want to be defended from other tribes that want to take away our freedoms and are jealous of our freedoms. And this is the world of Luos, is about wanting all these different qualities and things, But for example, Luos could say, well, to bend the forces of nature to human will, this is of the good. This is part of giving and receiving. This is part of love. This could be an expression of love. So Luos claims that it represents as much the good as soul would claim to represent. And why shouldn't we have perfection? Why shouldn't we have utopia? Why shouldn't we have purity? Why shouldn't one tribe be protected against another tribe that's jealous of its freedoms and what have you? There's loads of different qualities here. Why shouldn't we be in control and want to be in control and want to be successful? Why shouldn't we give energy into a system in order to get reward out of it? Surely that's part of the giving and receiving of energy, of what I call the sort of exchange of energy. Why shouldn't we want to be adored and worshipped and persuaded into buying more than buying stuff that we don't need, which is the basis of consumerism? It's all making the world get better, making the economies of the world go round. And indeed, it's because of consumerism and capitalism that human beings are now able to cope with the current pandemic in the world, because we have a healthy economy, because we have put money into research and development and technology and genetics and science and medical science. And if we didn't have all these things, if we were just all hippies sitting around smoking joints and hugging trees and hugging each other, we'd all be dead. So it comes, pray to Allah, but tie up your camel, kind of thing. And Luos is saying, well, we can pray to God if you want, but I intend to survive. I intend to tie up my camel. I intend to be practical and be governed by necessity, rather than some sort of airy fairy hippie idealism. And I represent love. I mean, control, success, bending things to my will, firmness, facts, Mr. Bounderby, facts, which Charles Dickens takes the Mickey out of by saying, education systems are based on facts, and they should be based on the sort of more kind of on self development. But that doesn't earn you bread. You know what I mean? It doesn't make you survive this harsh world. And Luos says, "Well, I'm into the spirit of humanity surviving our sojourn on this earth, and I want the individual to survive for as long as he or she possibly can, and I don't care about the little bunny rabbits and the vivisection laboratories. I don't care about having to fight wars and drop smart bombs on schools and stuff like that. If that's what it takes to survive, I'm going to do it, and I'm not going to care. I'm going to sleep well at nights because we're free to be having this. You are free to be watching this video because the USAF does things with smart bombs that CNN doesn't like, and the liberal establishment doesn't like. But hey, needs must. You know what I mean? So it's all part of perception, and you can debate all day about whether war is necessary, or war is good, or war is bad. It's a mixed bag, I would say, really, as per usual of everything in the world of duality. But nevertheless, it's possible also to get a glimpse of non-duality through soul awareness, whatever that means. And Luos would say, well, you don't even know what that means, do you? You don't even know what non-duality means. You don't even know what soul means. You don't even know what God is or who God is, or you don't know if God exists or anything. And But I mean, and Luos would say, well, look, what can be said about external religion? The wanting to impress or intimidate others by the expression of your religious fervor. I mean, doesn't that actually sum up all of religion, all of the throughout the history of man? And that's Luos. You could say, well, Luos has corrupted religion into that. But Luos will say, well, no, that's what religion is. Looking at it practically and objectively, and it all starts from people prattling on about attaining soul awareness, and it all ends up in with spiritual pride and intimidation and coercion and mind control through external religion. So soul is no better than Luos. I mean, Luos is the spirit that says, there is nothing higher than wanting power and money and success. I'm just honest about it, really. Whereas you hippies are just dishonest about it. You want power. You want power. The sort of power that comes from being a kind of fluffy hippie, and you're no better than the CEO of a great multinational. None of you are. And indeed, we are all sinners. I mean, that statement is made not in a judgmental way, but in a factual way. In the lower worlds, we are all sinners. We have a soul, but we all have Luos as well within us. We go from soul awareness to Luos awareness in a heartbeat. When the chips are down, we become selfish and vicious and self-preserving. As soul is not any of these things. And to achieve soul awareness is to get a glimpse of non-duality. But then you have to come out, what goes up comes down. So you're in the clouds and being a nice hippie, and then it's all like you stub your toe, or somebody says something nasty to you, or the police throw you in prison, or something like that. And suddenly it's like all this conspiracy, all the people are against us, and some kind of great conspiracy of evil against the soul of man and all this kind of stuff, and you just end up becoming as bad as the people that persecute you. You become a new set of persecutors, perhaps of other people, persecuting people that are not politically correct or don't see the world as you do. So yes, we are all sinners. Mea culpa. I'm a sinner. You're a sinner. We have soul. We have Luos. And indeed, Luos possibly is the dominant power, obviously, in this world of scarcity, in this world of duality. Um, and a lot of people would say, well, I worship Luos instead because Luos is more honest than Soul. Soul is the misfit. Soul is that doesn't fit with this world of duality, whereas Luos is the world of duality. And shouldn't we be, rendering unto Luos more than we render unto Soul? To which I would say, well, that's kind of an unbalanced view, isn't it, really? I mean, the person that has soul awareness is aware that they have the opposite of soul within them. It's just that they don't want to go too far into the materialistic world of power and money and exploitation, manipulation, and predation, because they realize that that can take you over and eventually destroy you. Whereas if you render unto Luos the things that are Luoses, and render unto soul the things that are souls, and you strike a happy balance between the two, or perhaps an unhappy balance. I find myself sometimes, straddling between soul and Luos, and seeing like Janus having two faces and seeing both sides of the question and being at the sort of boundary, the sort of red boundary between 2 points, and seeing myself being stretched and tortured and betrayed, and being loyal to one or the other, and being, let us say, split. My loyalties are split between Luos and Soul. I find myself, during the course of my career of meditation and yoga, being flung from one extreme to the other as well. 1 minute I'm Soul, and 1 minute I'm thinking about God, and the other I'm thinking about my stomach, or my genitals, or my self-esteem, or the fact that I want more or something. or I want to be rewarded and adored and worshipped by other people because I don't have very high self-esteem. And I find myself, a package basically of extremes of thinking. And I suppose you might say, well, what you want to do really is try to become an integrated, balanced individual. And Luos will just laugh and say, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does soul mean? What does God even mean? You're talking like fantasy, you know. You know better than I am because you think I'm in a fantasy, a petty world of fantasy after material gain, but you're in a petty world of fantasy out of spiritual gain. And does gain even apply to spirituality? Do I want to be successful at soul awareness? The very statement successful at soul awareness, you're buying into Luos right there, aren't you? So a lot of people tend to say, I would rather not be aware of any of this. I'd rather not have gnosis of all of duality. But in my life, I'm going to sort of try not to be too much Luos, and not too much soul for that matter. But when I experience the here and now, when I see a glimpse of non-dualism, I see a glimpse of God, see a glimpse of paradise or heaven. I'm not going to talk about it over much, but I'm going to remember it for sure. I'm going to see it. I'm going to hear it. I'm going to touch it. I'm going to smell it. I'm going to feel it, and I'm going to experience it, even if it's just the memory of it. And that memory will keep me balanced, will keep me not becoming too fanatical about anything, and in this way, and by this means, I attain what I call working gnosis. I attain a simple life, um, where I can give and receive and appreciate beauty of nature, and I can attain soul awareness without becoming unbalanced in the process. And then many people will say, well, come to think of it, I do this anyway. Pretty much everybody in the world actually does this more or less all the time. But it's definitely possible, for Luos to take over, and we become dragged into war and xenophobia and murdering each other really quite quickly. And ordinary decent people become monsters, because they're kind of drawn into the vortex of Luos, and the vortex of fear and acquisitiveness that Luos represents, and unbalancing. We become unbalanced, and then everything ends up in war and suffering, and even conspiracy, I suppose. And then soul reasserts itself, I suppose, on a cultural, economic, even level, and we become kind of like, we find our kindness again, we find our soul again, and we switch our soul back on, as it were, having had the switch thrown, whereby we lose our soul sense and soul awareness and just become ravening beasts. But the fact is that people, I suppose being a Gnostic is that you're aware that you have the ravening beast within you, and that you're aware that you have soul within you, and that oftentimes, or as frequently as you possibly can, all other things being equal, you will try to attain soul awareness consciously, and you will look at the people that are worshipping Luos, or Rex Mundi consciously, and you are observing dispassionately their downfall. So, we look at Adolf Hitler, for example, who, by the way, after he survived his big assassination attempt, he said that, Providence had spared him in order for him to continue his work. So he believed that the good was spared him his life, in order for him to continue the good work of eliminating Jews from the face of the earth. So he would argue, I'm working for the good. I'm working for light, in fact, against the darkness of Jewry. Um, and so that's that kind of sobering thought, really, is that everybody that done the most terrible things in history have all done it in order for the good. You know, I suppose except Genghis Khan, who served Luos, who just said, "Well, I want to rule the world, you know, and my hordes are going to invade everywhere." But it's not quite as simple as that because you know, in many ways, the Mongol hordes created a lot of the great things about our culture and civilization that we see today. And if they hadn't gone on the rampage throughout Eastern Europe, we wouldn't have the same sort of we wouldn't have a lot of the art and culture that we have today. Uh, Similarly with Alexander the Great, if he hadn't tried to try and rule the world, you know, things would be very different now. And perhaps it doesn't really matter how different or how the same things are in the world of duality. And so the person who's reached soul awareness just sits down and just dispassionately and objectively looks at the world as it is, and the world that they would like it to be, and appreciates the bitter irony of it, really. And I suppose if there's a lesson to be learned from attaining soul awareness, is an acceptance of the world as it is, but also a conviction that we can love kindness, and in our own way we can promote kindness and generosity and magnanimous gestures of love, you know, in our own sphere, and perhaps in our own neighborhood, possibly for another family living next door or whatever. And that's about the extent of it. But it goes in some ways to create balance between soul and luos, which is all that you can really you can only really attain balance between these forces. In this world of duality, neither soul nor luos are going to win. In fact, both of both soul and luos have indeed lost, actually, lost to duality, if you like. So these are the kind of things that I kind of ruminate on when I wake up in the morning. And I suppose even this contemplation, you know, has a beneficial effect in the sense that this video, that this monologue, makes me feel better anyway, and hopefully might make a few other people better who hear it.